Hi, Sheila. Thank you so much for joining me on the Moving Abroad series. If you would like to introduce yourself and just tell everyone who you are, and then we can get the conversation going.
Yeah, sure. I'm Sheila, and I moved to Rwanda in 2013 to 2014. It feels like ages ago now. Yeah, I'm looking forward to participating in this Moving Abroad series, sharing some of my experiences as well.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Okay, so
Thank you.
where exactly in Rwanda were you living? If you could just kind of give an idea of where you were living.
Yeah. So I was living in Kigali, which is that's the capital city of
Yeah.
Rwanda. Kigali is a very clean city. Like it's super clean, super organized, safer than
Nice.
most cities I've lived in.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I've heard good things about Rwanda, to be honest. Really good things.
you need to visit.
Yes, I do. Okay. So, what were you doing in Rwanda? Like, what made you move to Rwanda?
Yeah, so I was doing a internship. So essentially I was working for about a year and a bit and I knew I wanted to go into global health. So I was like, yeah, what could I do to kind of give me exposure into the field? And I'd always wanted to live in Africa. My uncle happened to be based in Rwanda at the time. So he kind of was the one that I'd stayed there for 5 weeks, like the year before, I forgot. So I'd stayed
Ah,
there for 5 weeks. I kind of got to know the city and I was like, oh, this looks
nice.
like somewhere like I could come back to. I wasn't working at that time, so I wasn't really doing anything with my time. So it's different going with with something in mind.
Yeah,
Um, so I did an internship with the World Health Organization.
nice.
Um, yeah, it was good. Now everyone knows who they are because of the coronavirus.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
was about to say.
at that time, people did not know who they were if you went in the global health world.
Ah,
Um, yeah, so I did an internship. It was supposed to be 6 months, and then I actually ended up staying for another 6 months
okay.
as a contractor.
So you're that
So
good.
it, God's grace.
Yes,
That's
God's
all I can
grace.
say.
I
That's all I can say.
no, that sounds really, really good and very interesting, actually. So you answered my next question, which was why did you move? And I guess you said your uncle was based there, and you had
Yeah.
visited the year before for a couple of weeks in the summer. So I guess
Mm.
you've answered my question. But did you have any other countries you were considering, or was it like, nah, Rwanda, I have to go. It has to be Rwanda that I'm going to this internship.
By fire, by force. No. Do you know what? Actually, I didn't have a country in mind. Rwanda was just easiest because I
Mm,
already had contacts there and my uncle was there. I'd already been there. So I kind of knew it a bit more. But I've always been open, you know me, open
yeah.
to living in any country in Africa.
Yes.
So I was just happy to have that experience. And Rwanda ended up being like, yeah, such a rich experience to have. I guess we'll talk about it a bit later, sort of the
Yeah.
history and the background and everything I learned while I was there. So
Mm.
definitely, I didn't go in thinking I must go to this one country. But when I was there, I was like, I'm really grateful that this is the country I ended up in for the experiences I
Oh,
had.
that's so nice.
Yeah.
So you said that you went to intern at the World Health Organization. Can you give us
Mm,
like how did you get into this career? Like if someone is interested to do something similar,
yeah.
what is your background? Like what did you study? Did you do any other
Mm.
work experience before this?
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, I feel like once you start working, you forget about everything you've done before.
Yeah.
Um, but I did my undergrad in biochemistry and genetics, because the idea was that I was going to go and do medicine because
Mm.
African families, so you do medicine. um, but I always knew that I don't think I really wanted to do medicine, but I definitely wanted to do something which was about sort of helping the health of the world, something that tackles inequality.
Mm.
Um, and so I wanted to do global health when I graduated, but I was like, I don't even know how to get into this field because
Mm.
if anyone knows global health, international development, it's like the most, I don't know, there's a lot of like secrecy about how you get into it. It's not a
Okay.
clear career path. It's not like you study medicine, you become a doctor.
And you know the
Um,
path.
yeah, there's no clear path. So actually, as soon as I graduated, I just was unemployed and I just wanted to get some experience. And so I did like a 3 month, I don't know what I would even call it, kind of an internship in a lab. working on schistosomiasis, which has the longest name in the world. But basically it's a neglected tropical disease.
Okay.
And so that was kind of to build my experience.
I don't know that.
Yeah. Don't worry. No, I didn't know. And then when I told my dad, he was like, oh, I had schistosomiasis when I was a child. I was like, oh. Okay.
Oh.
No, but it's basically, it comes in dirty water. So a lot of people,
Okay.
if you're living in like a poor community in Africa, like, yeah, you can get these worms and they embed in your skin. Anyway, so I did that, and then I was like, but I need like a proper job. And then I worked for a year and a half in quite a different field. Like there was a guy who'd started this pharmaceutical consultancy. So he used to work for, I can't remember, one of the big pharma companies. And then he'd left AstraZeneca. He'd left and started his own company. And so I literally just sent an email like, you lot hire him. Like, I didn't go through any proper channels.
That's how you do it there.
Honestly, I was like, hi, I live in Nottingham. And I was in Nottingham at the time. I was like, I live in Nottingham, looking for a job. Are you hiring? And then he got back to me like, yeah, okay. Like, he was just a bit confused. Like, it was so out of the blue. And I got talking to him. And then they offered me like what he called an apprenticeship, which was essentially like kind of like a step into that field. Yeah, so I did that for a bit, but it was very like data heavy. It was a field called pharmacometrics. Again, one of these things I'd never heard of until I got there. And I was like, oh, okay, this is like a whole other world. But then eventually I think I realized it wasn't the thing I wanted to do, but I got lots of like good experience. Then yeah, when I went to Rwanda for that 5 weeks, I kind of came back and I was just thinking about what I could do, how I could get into the global health field. And as I said, my uncle worked in Rwanda and he worked in the UN. So he already kind of had given me exposure to that world. And so I just got in contact with him, like, do you know, like, how could I get into this field? Like, I'm really interested. And so he put me in touch with the WHO head at the time.
Connects. That's what you call connects. Connections.
Do you know what? I keep saying it's just God's grace.
Amen.
But you know what? The thing is with international development, and I think that's why the field is so frustrating for so many people. It's so much about connections. Like a lot of people do get that first step either through an unpaid internship, which most people can't afford, or through like a contact, whether it's someone they met at work or, you know, like people. Generally, it's kind of like personal contacts. They're trying to change that now, I think, especially in WHO. They've started this whole new internship scheme.
That's great.
But anyway, yeah, I got a bit in touch with him, sent my CV and everything, and like you still had to do all the processes. And then then they offered me the role, and I was like, oh, great! It's unpaid for 6 months.
Okay, so, it's unpaid. Yeah. Okay, so you kind of had to supplement that in a way.
Yeah, I mean, that's and again, that's the thing with international development. Like, it's hard to get into, and if you don't have, so the reason I was able to do it unpaid, one, I'd already been working for a year and a half, but then that meant I would leave and not have a job and not be paid for 6 months. But obviously, having worked helped, and then I was staying with my uncle. So I didn't have accommodation costs, which really made a huge difference. Yeah.
That does. Okay, no, that is really interesting. I think that would be really helpful for other people who are thinking about trying to get into that field, or even interested in working in Rwanda, maybe with WHO or a similar organization. Okay, so wait, did you mention that you have a master's?
Yeah, I have two, you know.
Wait, what are your masters in?
So my undergrad was actually like they call it an undergrad master's.
Okay.
So basically at the end of my third year, my course introduced a scheme called like an intercalated master's.
Okay.
And at the end of my third year, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So when they introduced it, I was like, I'll do it because it's an extra year. It was covered by the student loan. Like, I was gonna get a master's. So I was like weighing things up. I was like, let me just do an extra year, get that extra qualification, and then figure out what I want to do in that year, which is bad. I guess people are supposed to figure out in the 3 years that you're at uni.
No, it's not bad.
Yeah, but so then I did that, and then I did my master's, my second one actually after after I left Rwanda. Because one of the things I realized is that in international development, I think it's quite important to have a graduate degree. They're kind of changing now, because I think they're realizing that if you have the equal experience, you could probably still do the same job as someone who has a master's. But at that time, I just realized that if I really wanted to progress, I needed to go get an extra qualification, and then come back. Yeah.
Okay. Can I just ask, what is that qualification after Rwanda?
Oh, so it's a nutrition for global health, which is global health nutrition. So it's like improving diets across the world, basically.
Nice.
And people always come to me and they're like, oh, can you give me diet advice? And I'm like, really, I'm not actually qualified to give individual nutrition advice. I can only give to the population. So maybe if you tell me like my school needs nutrition advice, I could do that. A country needs nutrition advice.
But not individuals.
Not individuals, yeah.
That's
just have to make that caveat.
That's so interesting. Nice. Yeah. You are, what do I say? A ball of knowledge. Okay, of this field, because I don't know this field, so to me this is all new, so this is very interesting.
Yeah.
So when you were living in Kigali, how did you get around, and what was the transport system like?
So the main, there's a few different ones. I got around a lot on the motorbikes. So in Rwanda they call them the moto, so it's kind of like I think most African countries have the equivalent.
Yeah.
It's just that in most countries they're not safe, and I felt safer in Rwanda. I felt they were safe.
Okay.
But they're like the primary way that a lot of people get around. So yeah, basically again, I was fortunate because I lived with my uncle, so to work he'd give me a lift. But if I wanted to go anywhere like socially, or if I was leaving work, I'd always get like a motorbike, and you just sort of flag them on the side of the street and get on. So it's cool. I loved it. And they gave you a helmet, because I feel like in Kenya we have them, but they don't give you helmets.
Yeah, I was going to say, who gives helmet?
Yeah, they give you helmets.
That's good though.
And I think now they have even have a better system. I think they've improved the safety, from my understanding anyway, from what I see on social media. So that's the main way. But there are like I'm going to say there are like I don't know what they're called now, but like little like buses kind of thing. In Kenya we call them matatu, but I don't know I can't remember what they're called in Rwanda. They have those.
Okay, so you used to take the motorbikes around more often and then get a lift. So let's talk about working for who. What was the work culture like in Rwanda in comparison to let's say the UK? Was it similar? Were there differences? What was it like?
Yeah, it was so different. I feel like, and maybe it's because I was living in a different country as well. But I think the work culture is generally more sociable. In the sense that I feel like sometimes in the UK, like as soon as you leave that office, like your colleagues you don't speak to your colleagues. If you see them on the street, it's a bit awkward. But I feel like in Rwanda it wasn't like that. I feel like it was a lot. Yeah, it was just a lot more socializing. And because there was lots of expats, so people who'd traveled and were working overseas, there was also like an expat community. So there was kind of the Rwandan local, the staff. The majority of the staff I worked with were from Rwanda, and they were a lot older than me. They were, I want to say, from their 40s upwards.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there was like the way that I worked, because in WHO in Rwanda they have what they call a one UN system. So like all the UN agencies work together as one. That's how they call it. And so you actually work across all the different agencies. So even though I was with WHO, like I'd also be doing stuff with the rest. So I was part of something called the UN Communications Group, and with them there was a lot of like young, I guess expats. I don't really like that term, but anyway, young expats who'd moved and were volunteering and interning. And so there was like that community as well, and everyone was kind of like, they became your friends essentially, because you didn't know anyone else in the country.
That's interesting. So you did more, so although you worked, you also did a lot of stuff with people outside of work, and you kind of got to know people within the expat community as well as inside of work and outside of work. But that's good.
Yeah, definitely.
That is good. And I'm guessing that they also helped you kind of adapt to living in Rwanda?
Like my colleagues?
Yeah, or no?
I'm just trying to think. Yeah, they did a little bit. I think it was difficult because there was such a big age gap as well.
Okay. Were you
Random people generally a bit more reserved.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
Were
so
you kind of seen
they're a
like,
bit more reserved.
were you kind of seen as like the baby in the office, or no? Or because they were a lot older?
Yeah. I don't know, I never even thought about that. I think I was just like, because they'd had interns before, I
Okay.
think it wasn't like they'd only had two, but because they'd had that experience, it wasn't that weird for me to be there. But I think they were just kind of like, I don't know, they became like some of them like, not parental, that's the wrong word to say. I think they were, I guess, caring in a sense. But in terms of helping me settle in, I guess I didn't need them that much because I had my
Had your
uncle and he'd been there for a while. And there was a guy living with us as well who was like, really random story, but he was like a street child who somehow befriended my uncle and then ended up living with us. So he knew Rwanda quite well.
Okay.
So I feel like, yeah, they didn't help me acclimatize necessarily to like Rwandan culture. That was more so, I guess, my uncle taking me to a few different places. But I would say Rwandans generally, on the whole, are a bit more reserved.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it takes a while for them to like warm up to you. Even though they were friendly, it wasn't like a open arms kind of thing.
Okay. So that's
Yeah.
good to know. So what would I know? This is a very hard question because I know every day is not the same. But what would a typical work day have been like working at who? Obviously, there's no one typical work day.
Yeah, I was gonna say
in your field, I'm assuming that you do different things every day.
Yeah.
But I guess you could kind of say what time you started, when you finished, the gist of the kind of stuff you were doing in your work in a day, but not. I know it changes from day to day, but just kind of
it
like
changes.
Yeah,
it's like definitely there wasn't. I don't know. It was kind of a bit of both. So there'd be stretches of time where you're doing like a standard work day. So I'd go in, I think the day started earlier. I feel like work started at 8:30. So I'd get there at 8:30, and then take a lunch. The one thing that was great is that they have really long lunches. When I first got there, I was like half an hour, British lunch. And people were like chilled at lunchtime. And I was like, this is amazing. So you have a bit like, I would say lunch is about an hour or so or more, like an hour and a half, 2 hours. So you start earlier. Generally, I would finish relatively late. I don't know if that's because I just did a lot of work, so because I was always taking on extra stuff to do. So I probably start around 8:30, have relatively long lunch, and then maybe leave at around 5:30, 6, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
But that's if I was doing like standard office stuff. But then there'd be times where when I first got there, we like organized this like World Health Day for all the UN staff. So with that, there was no standard day.
Yeah.
It was like, I go in, I need to go have a meeting with someone at UNDP, so I now have to go to that compound, and then have to go check out the site. So then I'd have to go to like this other site. And then one time I was doing like a survey of nutrition requirements and nutrition status in refugee camps. So essentially, like, how healthy are they? And that was like 5 days away from the office.
Oh, wow.
On like those massive like 4x4s, going through different refugee camps, doing surveys. Like I was with people and they were like measuring the kids to see how healthy they were and all that kind of stuff. So it was quite mixed, to be fair.
Okay.
And with that, you're like staying in like hotels, but they're not really when I say hotels, it sounds like fancy, doesn't it? But it's like it wasn't. Some of them were not for the refugee camp stuff, but some of them were. And then so sometimes you'd be away from the office for a week or so doing that kind of stuff. So so it was quite mixed, to be fair.
Okay, so it sounds like you had like a variety of stuff that you did in your internship, which is really good. So so we've kind of touched on accommodation because you stayed with your uncle. What is accommodation actually like?
It's quite mixed because obviously like UN staff, they have to have like a certain standard of security. So generally those houses they're a bit bigger, they're in like secure neighborhoods, and they usually have like guards and police people watching over the neighborhood. then I guess they're gone.
Is it like its own village? Kind of. Not a
really.
village, but it's kind of its
Yeah,
own.
It's like a gated street, maybe I would say. Maybe that's the best way to describe it. So it's like a little community, and then within, so you'd have like one street, and then they have like a main guard for that. But then they also had all their individual guards as well.
Okay.
But that isn't the way a standard person would be living. Like if I wasn't staying with my uncle, that's not where I'd be staying. So they have, it's really varied, and it's really dependent on, I guess, for the locals, it was quite mixed. The people who didn't have as much money, they lived in different parts of town, obviously much smaller houses, generally one level. And then it varied to sort of different levels, all the way to like bungalow sizes, to like multi-story houses.
Yeah.
The one thing I don't remember there being lots of apartments.
Okay.
I feel like I don't remember seeing lots of like multi-story apartments with loads of like flats within them. So maybe that's the only difference.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know the UN had their own, like, when you work for UN, like they have their own compounds, like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
that is interesting.
I think because a lot of them are not working in their own country.
Yeah,
and so they need to be like assured that they're secure. So yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
No, I just find it really interesting.
Yeah, and I think other NGOs have the same thing as well. I think it's not just the UN thing. Obviously, the UN is maybe more strict in that sense, but I think generally a lot of the bigger NGOs would. I think if you're working for a smaller NGO, you'd obviously be living in a slightly different area. Maybe the housing would be a bit smaller, but generally, I think they still try and make sure it's like relatively secure. But Rwanda, it was a very safe country, to be honest, from my recollection.
I've heard that multiple times from everyone I've heard about Rwanda. I've heard it's safe. So no, that sounds
very
good.
safe. Yeah. I remember there was like one crime, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, it was not a crime. I think it was a murder."
Oh wow.
And it was like a really big deal. Everyone was talking about it. But I feel like because like in England, when there's a murder in the press, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's not as big a deal because there's so many things like that happen. That's the one. Yeah, that's the one difference, I guess.
That's great. So you mentioned that you started off as an intern and then you became a contract. Did you say contractor? But so did that mean you got paid?
I did. Yeah.
That's good.
I don't think I could have done 6 more months without being paid.
No, that's good to know that you can go from intern to staying on. So I don't know if you mind mentioning this. If you don't, just let me know. But what was like the monthly salary like once you moved from intern to a contractor?
I think mine was, it was $3,000 because it was in dollars per month.
Okay, that's great. From unpaid to...
Yeah, which was pretty good. I don't know how much that is in pounds, like 2,000 something.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good. The thing is, obviously, it's not guaranteed that would happen.
Yeah, no, definitely.
For me, it was very much like right place, right time. But the one thing I remember that one colleague telling me is that within the UN, you can, because I was like, I guess that's the lowest level of contractor that you could be offered. But as a contractor in the UN, you could definitely ask for a lot more. I remember one colleague was like, ask for more next time. I was like, I don't have any experience to be trying to negotiate anything. But I think you can definitely like go like for more than that if you're consulting or contracting for the UN. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, it's not guaranteed that you go from intern to like contractor paid, but it can happen. It's good to know that it could happen, right?
Yeah, and you have to be like really you have to network loads and like speak to people. Like, yeah, I think when you're in a different country, if you're thinking about trying to get a different role, like try and widen your network as much as possible, speak to people, invite people to lunch, like lots of different things to try and figure out what opportunities are out there. Yeah, that's the one thing I would say.
So it's all about networking. Okay, good.
Yeah, 100%.
So, okay, we kind of touched on locals. You said that very kind of reserved. So just want to ask, did you feel welcome? So not just your work colleagues, but in going out to the shops? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Yeah, in public. I'm trying to remember. I don't know. I think it's tricky. I don't think everyone was like super like. I think Rwandans are just not very expressive, so it's not like I don't know. Like in Kenya, I feel like people are loud and like very like bubbly, and I don't think that's how you would like characterize people from Rwanda. But I think once you get to know people, people start to open up more. I think people are just a bit hesitant to open up, I guess, themselves and their world to you initially. So it takes a while to, I think, integrate into like local culture or find people that you can get close to. Because even when I think about all the Rwandan friends I had, it ended up being a lot of them were Rwandans that had lived in like South Africa or lived overseas and then moved back. So they became like my, I guess, close friends from Rwanda.
So you mentioned the expat community. We know that there is one, like there is one in every other country, but how all the expats that you knew, how did you find them? Was it just at your job? Did you find them through groups online or in other ways through your uncle? How did you find other expats, or was it just through work?
Mine was mainly through work, and then through that you find other people connected. I just didn't have any friends, to be honest. So I was like, I can't stay here for 6 months and not have friends. So I think one of the expats, one of the early ones I met, I just met her and I was just like, yeah, I just have no friends. And to be honest, I think that's one of the things about living overseas. Like you have to be really humble and like put yourself out there. I would never do that in London. Like I'd never go up to someone and be like, I don't have friends. How do I like yeah, I need friends. And I think even she was a bit taken aback and she was like, okay, cool, let's meet up for lunch. And she ended up being one of my like really close friends, and we still even I met up with her when she was in London a while back. So I think once you kind of get in, you are then opened up to like this whole other world of expat. And I think there's a real difference between expats who are there for years versus expats who are there for a few months. And so sometimes the ones who are there for years don't necessarily want to make friends with the ones who are there for just a few months. And I kind of get it, because otherwise they'll just be making friends every 3 months. So generally they're looking for, I guess, longer term friends. And then the ones who were there for a shorter period like me, that's who I ended up befriending more. And then I just befriended like one girl who was like super sociable and she knew everyone. And so
that one person knows everyone, can introduce you to everybody else.
Super connector. Super connector. These are the people that you want to befriend. So yeah, I think I was just fortunate in that sense. But I think a lot of mine were through work. I'm guessing other people who maybe don't have work. There were expat forums that you could go to. There were very like specific events as well. So like every Monday there was a quiz night at a pizza place, and lots of expats would meet each other there. So there were like events, because it's Kigali so small, like you bump into the same people all the time. So if you go to like specific things, you're bound to like bump into people or to meet new people who are there as expats kind of thing. So yeah, I think there's a variety of ways.
So like you mentioned the pizza events and stuff like that. How would one know? Would one know about these events?
Yeah, I heard about it through people, but there's expat forums. So like it was called like I can't remember the pizza place now, but the quiz night. So like Monday night quiz night, that's kind of the expat place to be. And they had similar things like that, I think, for most nights of the week. So definitely the expat forums, if you don't have any connections at all. I guess it depends like why and how you've ended up moving there as well. If it's for work, 100% go through like work contacts, speak to people at work, ask them like what is there to do.
And they can.
But yeah, the forums are so helpful.
Okay, good. No, that's good. That's good. So, can you speak any of the language? Did you learn any when you were there? I'm not asking you right now, like, but when you were there, did you try to learn the language?
I learn?
Or
no, I didn't.
No, that's cool. To be honest, it is quite hard to learn when you're working and you're living in a new place, it can be quite hard to also, on top of that, try to learn a language fully.
Try and learn.
Yeah, but
yeah, I tried to learn like greetings and like more social things, because I feel like you should make an effort if you're living in a different country.
Definitely.
So like I learned how, I think I'm probably gonna forget now, but like Maramutse is how you say good morning. Muriwe is how you say good evening.
All right.
Oh, I forgot how to say thank you. Murakoze chane. So like things like that I learned because you kind of, I don't know, like they're just like social niceties, I guess, which are important. But I didn't learn the language. I tried to learn French. So I had a French tutor who would come every so often, because that's kind of like the second language, because it's an ex-Belgian colony. I think Belgian and French, I can't remember. But so French is like the other widely spoken language. So it's Kinyarwanda and French. But English is now being introduced, or had at that time, and is still being introduced as like one of the main languages. So people speak English, but I think people are much more comfortable with French or Kinyarwanda.
No, that's cool. That's good. I do always recommend try to learn some of the local languages if you can.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think you should.
Yeah, I think you should.
It's just, isn't it?
Yeah,
I agree. Turn up into someone's country and be like, speak my language.
Like a language, yeah. It doesn't make sense, but yeah. But I think we can be like that sometimes, especially from English-speaking countries when we go to other countries. Yeah. So it is good that you made the effort. So, okay, let's talk about food. What was food like in Rwanda? So obviously you can't tell me every single dish that they have, but kind of like the general gist of the kind of foods that they have.
Kinds of food.
And what was your favorite dish?
Yeah, I feel like I don't remember so much, but now it's coming back. So they had one thing called one of the really popular things is called bruschette. So it's basically like a kebab stick with meat on it. To be honest, it's just a kebab, but it's called bruschette. But it's not. It has usually beef on it, I think, or lamb, but a red meat anyway, as opposed to like chicken. So that's really popular, and it's kind of like you can find that in I guess the more upmarket local spots, but also like most local restaurants would sell that. So that's definitely one of the things. They had this like really spicy chili. It's called akabanga, and it's like chili oil is the way I would describe it. And I used to put that on everything. So I think I didn't eat a lot of random food, but definitely the bruschette and akabanga was like my thing.
Your favorite.
And they do a lot of banana dishes, but not like ripe normal banana and not plantain.
Okay.
Like cooking banana. I feel like West Africa doesn't really have that, but we have it in Kenya as well.
Yeah, no, we don't. We just eat plantain.
You don't have that, do you? Yeah, we don't have plantain, so we have like cooking banana in like a stew. So that was another like really common one. Yeah, so I guess maybe bruschette was my favorite, and I don't really like red meat. But it's just like it was an easy thing to get. It was everywhere. Yeah.
Nice. That sounds good. I want to try it. So in terms of the culture, what is one of the things that you learned about being in Rwanda culturally? Does that make sense?
As in like what I learned about the country, all that kind of stuff.
One of the things that you learned.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to like reduce it to this, but obviously like the genocide was one of the big things that I knew a bit about, but I didn't know the details, and I didn't know I guess just how much it had impacted pretty much everyone in the country. And even if you weren't living there at the time, you would have family members, like everyone. It impacted pretty much everyone. And so that's one of the things I just learned is I just learned more about the history of the genocide and what happened. And I just had a deeper understanding. I think I had a deeper appreciation for like their strength and resilience. Because I was there during I think it was the 20th anniversary of the genocide. And yeah, at that time, so they have a period of mourning in April, which commemorates sort of that month where most of the atrocities were happening. And in that period, it's kind of like, that's when people speak openly about it, and people are much more, they're just open about what happened to them. And I was just like, I just had so many like sad things that I just didn't like from people around me, people I knew. And so I think I just had a lot of appreciation for how like strong and resilient they were. And like, it's insane thinking that happened 20 years ago. And if you look around the country now, like it's I just can't even imagine it happening, because it's so developed and doing so well. So I think I just learned more about that.
I think it is really important to, I don't want to say you have to like read every single history book about the country that you're going to, but I do think it is good to get an understanding of the history. I think that's really good that you learned that.
I was going to say, the one thing I'd recommend for anyone thinking about visiting, definitely go to the genocide memorial, because they have, basically it's like one memorial, but they have the whole history and everything explained, and then how it compares to other genocides across the world. So that's like a really informative thing. So you don't have to learn all the history, but I think that's one place that you should go
to kind of learn,
just to I think it will help you understand like people a bit more as well, because 20 years is not that long.
It's not.
And so it kind of helps you. It's not at all. It will help you understand, one, how far the country's come to be able to be having all these like advances. They have like robots at the moment helping with taking temperature in the hospital.
I'm telling you right now, like every time I hear about Rwanda, I'm like, okay, Rwanda, okay, you're doing well.
Definitely. So I think it helps with that. And then the other thing is, like, once you're there for a while, and people open up to you, you start to kind of find out about more things to do and places to go, which you don't necessarily or wouldn't have access to as an expat. I think once people trust you a bit more, and kind of have to like get past a certain layer, but once you do, you're exposed to this whole other world, which is cool.
Wow, that's good. That's really good. Okay, so what did you really enjoy about living in Rwanda? What was the one or two things that you really loved about living there?
I loved the scenery. It's so beautiful, literally. And I'm not even that person to be like walking around like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But I'd be walking home and be like, this landscape is so beautiful. It's called, so Rwanda is called Demilkoli, which is like the land of 1,000 hills, because it's very hilly. And a lot of people call it like the Switzerland of Africa, because it has that same kind of mountainous, I don't know what the word is. Landscape, that's the word. It has a mountainous landscape. And so everywhere you are, you can always kind of see, if like where we lived was like at the top of a hill. And so you could always see like quite a big expanse of land. And so I really enjoyed, like, I like walking anyway, but I enjoyed walking around the city and just like kind of taking in the sights, and wherever you are, even in the capital, you still have quite beautiful landscape around you. But then I think if you go a bit further away from the capital to the, I want to say north, but again, my geography, away from like the city, the landscape's even more beautiful. And if you go all the way to the lake, I don't know what the lake's called now, but it's on the border with Burundi, I believe, and also the DRC.
I don't know.
So yeah, I think it's DRC. I don't know if Burundi's correct, but I think it's beautiful. Very beautiful. And I think I liked but I don't know if this is unique to living in Rwanda, but I just liked the fact that, I guess, pros and cons. The expat community was quite small, but that meant you could get to know quite a lot of people in a very short space of time. And I'm still friends with quite a few of them, like distant friends, in the sense that we don't speak every day. But I've definitely kept in touch with a few people here and there. So I did like the expat element of it.
So it meant that you got to know people.
You get to know people. Sometimes it's a bit much, because you have to, like, you're ending up having to avoid people because you've got to know everyone, and you're like, there's nowhere to hide. That's the only thing. But so I guess it depends on how much you want to socialize. But the other thing I was going to say is that when I was there, I met so many young female entrepreneurs, and that's because the government was investing a lot in the youth to start up their own businesses. And so it was really inspiring. I think I really enjoyed kind of seeing that. I don't know, it was very dynamic. Like there was just a lot of like energy towards like helping develop the country, starting up businesses. Like there was just a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship happening because it is developing so quickly. So I really liked that energy and just how much the government seemed to care about investing in young people and especially investing in technology. So that was really cool.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's really cool, good and smart.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because the young people are the ones who are going to build the country. But
Really
it was amazing. Yeah, you'd see people and be like, I remember walking into like I think it was a restaurant with this girl, and she was like, yeah, she was in her 20s. And she was like, yeah, I developed the computer system that restaurant's using for like taking orders and stuff. And I guess that's the benefit of coming from a country which is developing right now, is that like you can have quite a big impact in developing like little things or innovations. So that was cool.
Yeah, no, that is really cool. Wow. What were the major challenges that you had while living there, if you had any?
What are the major challenges? I think initially like not having any friends was really hard.
Yeah, do you know what? It can be hard. Like,
yeah, if you're not, and because I couldn't really be friends with everyone in my office because they were so much older. And so those first few months were a bit shaky for me because I was like trying to figure out like how, maybe month actually, not month. And then my uncle, I think, like went away for a while to do some work somewhere, I can't remember, in my first few weeks. So I was kind of like trying to make friends here and there. And I think that part is challenging, and like settling yourself into a new city where you don't know anyone aside from, I was even fortunate that I had like a family member, which I think makes a big difference. But I think that's a huge challenge. But I guess that's not specific to Rwanda. I think that's probably if you move anywhere. Yeah, and then I guess towards the end it becomes the opposite problem, where you know so many people that it's hard to like, your social life becomes so active and actually you need to take time to pull away. So by the end I was just like, need to like not be doing as much. I'm just tired all the time. I was working a lot, socializing a lot. So
I guess with that, you kind of made the most out of your time there, because I imagine there's some people that can look back at it and be like, oh, you know what, I didn't really make an effort to do this or do that. But I'm going to assume that you looking back at your experience in Rwanda, you're not going to say that, because you did so much.
Yeah, I definitely made the most of being there.
Yeah.
I think just because I was aware that I wasn't going to be there forever. I think maybe if you go there and you're like on a contract, like a 2-3 year contract, maybe you don't do as much. But I think, yeah, I definitely made the most of it. But it's also like I guess because it was a career that I really wanted to be in for a long time. So I was just excited. I was just excited on very many fronts. But I was excited to be in a different country, living in an African country, that it wasn't cold, the weather was nice. I was excited to be doing something in international development. Like I just had a lot of like energy when I was there, because I was like, oh my gosh, I get to finally do all these things.
Oh no, I feel you. Did you experience culture shock at all when you moved there, and homesickness? And if you did, how did you deal with these things like culture shock, homesickness?
Yeah, I definitely had homesickness. I think it was in that period when I didn't really like, I think when people don't know you, so they don't know what to make of you, I don't know what to make of people. And so it's kind of like it's the way I would describe it actually, it's like kind of like when you start university, like in your first year, and when there's that, you feel a bit like unstable and uncertain, because you're like I'm here, I'm excited to be here, but I also, it's really different to what I'm used to. Everyone's different, everyone's new. Like, so I definitely had an adjustment period. Definitely had homesickness. I remember tweeting like really sad, not tweeting, my status on WhatsApp or one of those things, like, oh, I'm so homesick. I definitely had that. yeah, I think it's hard. I think it's until you find your circle, even if it's just one other person, it's a challenge settling in. Then in terms of culture shock, I think it was people being so reserved initially was really hard for me to get to know people. I think my culture shock was probably reduced by the fact that I'd already been there for 5 weeks the year before. So it wasn't hugely different. And also they're East African. And although culturally they're quite different, there were some similarities. So I didn't find the culture shock to be like overwhelming. So I think limited.
So do you advise people to visit first for a short period before going? If they can. Obviously not everyone has that opportunity to. If you can.
Yeah, 100%. If you're planning to be there for the length I was, I guess it depends on your personality as well. I would find it really hard to just be thrown somewhere with like not knowing anyone, and then having to like build this whole like network and life. Some people like that challenge, but I think it's definitely helpful to, even if it's just like for a week, to try and just, I don't know, just to kind of get a sense of what the country is like. You won't know what it's like to live there by visiting on holiday, but just to have a sense of, you know, some countries you go and you're like, oh, this is somewhere I could imagine like staying, whereas some countries you go and you just get the sense of, I can't see how I'd really fit in here or whether I'd enjoy living here. But yeah, I definitely advise that. I think if you're planning to move somewhere though, I would speak to people if you have them in your network, or even those you don't, like just message people. I think series like this will be really helpful for people thinking about working or living overseas. But I would definitely tap into people that have already done what you're planning to do.
Like you.
And ask them questions. Yeah, like me. Yeah, if you're thinking about moving to Rwanda, get in touch.
So apart from maybe potentially visiting, are there any other things that people need to consider before moving to Rwanda? Like just anything you can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's pretty expensive actually.
Okay.
Cost of living is relatively high, especially if you're thinking about things like accommodation. I think the rents are quite high. I don't know what it's like now, but I assume similar. But yeah, if you're Rwandan and you know, write in the comment section. But yeah, the rents were expensive. Even like the cost of living was relatively expensive.
Really?
Yeah, I think everything just adds up after a while. But I think it's not the cheapest place to live. If you live in London, obviously it's cheaper than London because everything's cheaper than London.
Yeah.
But I think that's the one thing to be aware of, the cost of living.
Okay.
I don't think there's much else that is specific to the country. I think it's quite an easy country to live in as an expat, to be honest. I think it's relatively easy to settle in.
That's good to know. I mean,
because it's safe.
Money is important, but no, that's good to know. No.
Yeah, well, especially as an intern.
Yeah, I'm paid.
Yeah, I don't think I would have been able to afford to live there. In that short, with that short notice, had I not been living with my uncle. If you're coming for like shorter periods, I do have hostels. There's one really popular hostel. Again, if I remember the name, I'll share it with you. To start. And there was loads of expats coming from sort of America, lots of different countries who always went to that hostel. And that's in it's quite like a cool area. I don't know if it's changed now, but it was like lots of nice restaurants, quite like a fun young vibe.
Okay.
So that's the one place maybe you could check out, whether they have like longer term leases or arrangements that you can make if you're there for a longer period.
Okay, no, that's good to know. So when you were moving back to the UK, how did you find it adjusting back? Did you experience reverse culture shock? Like, how did you find it?
Yeah, it was rough, man. It was really hard. I think it's because I'd always wanted to live in an African country, and so I was kind of like, I came back to do my master's actually. So I came back and then straight away went into doing my degree, which helped, I think, to be fair, because I think I didn't have that much time to think about the reverse culture shock. But I just remember coming back and thinking, like, my journey from my house to the office, even if my uncle didn't give me a lift on the motorbike, I think was like 10 minutes, I want to say, even less if they were speeding. And everything was just so easy, like getting around was so much easier. So I really like hated commuting when I got back, and I was just like really stressed on the Northern Line, thinking I remember just thinking, what kind of life is this? It's like really, really dramatic. But I definitely, that and the weather, because I came back in, I think September, around about September, so the weather was just changing. So I definitely had reverse culture shock. I was like missing everyone that I'd made friends with, and yeah, I think it's quite hard once you settle into like a whole new life to get back into British culture. Yeah.
I guess that became your norm, like living in Rwanda, your people, the sun. Quick transport.
I think, to be fair, I think it's the commute that's the main thing. I think just like because sometimes I would even walk home, like it would take an hour, or 45 minutes to an hour. But it was still nice because it was sunny. Like, it was an enjoyable walk, and like there's no way I could walk from like from Euston to Kent. Like it's just not possible.
Yeah.
So
I feel you.
Those kinds of things
on the commute. Yeah. I don't think anyone likes commuting in London. Like no one likes it. Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. No, I feel you. So would you ever want to move abroad again? And if so, where?
Yes. But you know this. I definitely would. I would ideally be somewhere in Africa. Off the top of my head, I've become like obsessed with Ethiopia recently. So I would love to. I think I need to visit first. So I want to actually visit and get a sense of what it's like. But Ethiopia would be on my list. Ghana would be on my list. Kenya, of course, but yeah, that kind of that goes without saying because I'm Kenyan. So and then maybe South Africa. They're kind of the four that I have in my mind.
Nice.
But I think definitely I when I think, I don't know what would happen, what's going to happen, but when I think about where I want to be in the future, I definitely see myself living and working, hopefully, in an African country. That's the ideal anyway.
Nice. And I guess in your field, it's possible. Like
I hope so. I don't know whether we're I don't know, given the situation right now, it's kind of hard to even imagine but next year,
God willing.
But generally
at some point there's a possibility.
With international development, there's always opportunities to explore working in those areas. And I think because I've done it before, I feel a bit more comfortable about the idea of doing it. So hopefully anyway, that's the dream. Nice weather.
No, I totally feel you. I can understand. So we're wrapping up our conversation now, and if you want people to connect with you, no pressure, but if you would like people to connect with you, where is the best place to connect with you?
Best place would be on Instagram, probably. What is my app? At Sheila, SHEILA _M_27.
So I hope everyone else also is enjoying the series, and look out for the rest of the episodes. So thank you so much, and